Welcome to 2023 and Getting Down to Business. I'm Jill Brown, Academic and Career Advisor with the Moomin College of Business.
And I'm Ashley Curtis, Career Counselor and Internship Coordinator. You know, we are so excited. We had such a successful season 1, and today's episode is kicking off season 2. And, you know, as we head into this episode, Jill and I were reflecting a lot on, you know, making sure that you, our listeners, really understand our intentionality behind this podcast. So with that, you know, each episode we aim to bring you more information on internships, how you can make connections and build your network, and developing leadership skills to make you competitive in the workplace.
Quite a mouthful,
It
Ashley.
is.
Yes, but that is our focus, and we also really want to hear from our listeners. We had some feedback, and this year we would like for you to ask a question on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and if we ask your question on the show, you will become the proud new owner of this mug.
Woo.
Yes.
All right, so getting down to business with today's guest, Regional Chancellor Hardigree. Christian, welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Now, we know you've only been on the job for about 6 months. You said 6 months and 25 days, correct?
Nobody's counting whatsoever, but yes, just shy of my 7th month.
I love that. So for those of our listeners who aren't yet familiar with you, I hope they are by now, but if they're not, share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role on this campus.
Well, gosh, that's a loaded question. What a phenomenal opportunity. The St. Petersburg campus, the St. Petersburg community, Pinellas County is just the most generous and engaging and truly cutting edge place to be when you look at the businesses that are coming here. And so when the position for the regional chancellor came available, I thought it was a phenomenal opportunity to be in a place where it's happening, where it's at.
That's right.
And so yeah, my job is, it's interesting. I'm starting to kind of come to terms with it because I'm very much a worker bee. I like to sit down. I like to have a work product, create, generate. And as it turns out, that's not a lot of what I spend my day doing. So I get a chance to go talk to our constituents, to be in our community. I serve on a number of different boards. But gosh, what a great opportunity to expand my skills. So when you talk about internships or career opportunities, they're the things you think you'll be doing with your job. And then they're the things you realize that these are really necessary components of what you do. And some of that sort of blends and changes. And so I've been experiencing that for the past 7 months.
Love it. Thank you.
We are so excited to have you here on our campus. And your energy, your enthusiasm brings a lot. So we're going to do a little game as we like to kick off our podcast and ask you a few questions. Okay?
Alrighty.
All right. Do you prefer cats, dogs, or reptiles?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I'm going to have to go cat dog because I have both.
I know, right?
So yes.
But I'm going to say dog. Don't tell the cat.
Well,
Because then they'll be, they get ticked off. Cats are very emotional.
we have a Maine Coon rescue who is orange. Her name is Pumpkin. We got her right after Halloween. And we also have a Great Dane. And my 140-pound dog is terrified of my 18-pound cat. And it's hysterical because Grace, the Great Dane, will come around a corner and Pumpkin will be standing there and Grace ducks her head and won't make eye contact and freezes like a child who's been caught with her hand in a cookie jar. And so it's just epically entertaining. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm going to go with those. That's my double
cat
answer.
dog.
Sorry,
Okay.
I think
I
I
love
broke
it.
the
That's
rules
all right.
already.
No, it's good. Would you rather have the ability to read minds or heal people?
Oh, heal people.
All right.
Absolutely. I was a bartender. I can read a pretty good mind. Sorry.
Plenty of practice,
That's
right?
Plenty of practice.
Okay, last deep question. Biscuits and gravy or French toast?
Oh, biscuits and gravy. I'm from Georgia.
Southern wins. Awesome. All right. So as we kick off the new year, we want to hear about what goals you have for the USF St. Pete campus in 2023.
As we really lean into our identity, we're a campus. We're small enough to really have sort of a concierge approach, a one-on-one contact with our students, with our community. The faculty are such an integral part, but as are the staff. But yet we're big enough to lead, And so I look at it as, when I think about 5 years from now, I'd like to be at a point where 85, 90% of the students who are at USF St. Pete chose us intentionally, right? And that means we've got to elevate our brand as we think about how we're perceived within middle and high schools. I think about the ability to every student who wants an internship, we're able to hand place them into it. Certainly we have handshake and systems and people like you that help them with that. But for that student that's just not a good modality, or they're not being successful, or it's overwhelming, or whatever the reason, then we can make phone calls until we place them into a position. And the same for career placement. I would like to be able to say 100% of our students are either going to graduate school or we've hand placed into a career trajectory, into that placement, that first position. When I think about where we sit, in terms of as we pursue being in the top 25, there's some very specific places that we're at. Salaries, right? 8% of that score is based upon faculty salaries. And so we have been going through a process to look at salary equity and have been increasing those through a multi-step process with the deans. And so getting to a point where we've got all of our faculty and staff to an equitable and market rate, I think is a priority.
No
and so,
complaints from us.
Yeah,
No,
fair enough.
Yeah.
People don't usually say no, keep your money. And then the engagement with the community. I mean, we really are a brain hub. And as you look at the historic gas plant district and what that's going to mean, we're going to drop $1 billion into this community. And all of the growth and all of the potential there. And that's on top of what's already come to St. Petersburg and Pinellas. And so to really be integrated, to have faculty internships, not just our students, but let's get our faculty into internship opportunity, to expand our study abroad. I mean, there are a lot of ideas. So I see us as truly doubling down on what we're already doing. And what we're already doing is phenomenal. Let's just, continue to scale that so that, we're dominating. World domination. That's my final answer. Final answer, world domination.
Yes. It's important to bring up, though, we are a hub, St. Pete, this campus of innovation, energy, excitement. I could add more, but, thanks for...
And I think I love the idea of, because I think we default to thinking students and internships, right? But the learning never stops, or it shouldn't stop. And so to look at how do we do that when you're no longer a student and in a different position, right? And hopefully our students are thinking about how do they do that when they're thinking about their own personal and career development.
Absolutely. I mean, we should be it shouldn't be one and done. You shouldn't come here, get one degree, and you're done, right? We should be the place, whether it's a certificate, if it's a badge, if it's just a certain subset of knowledge, skill, and ability, or if it's another degree, because you're going to pivot somewhere totally different. The days of thinking, I'm going to go work in an industry for 30 years, get my gold watch, and be done are over.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, our students are really looking at career 2.0, 3.0, 7.0. And so we should be the one-stop shop that helps people with that. And one of the things our students don't always understand is they get support from our career services forever. And so keep her employed. No, but you can come back, even if you graduated 4, 5, 6 years ago, and come back and mine opportunities, have resume reviews, practice your elevator pitch or your interview skills. I mean, we're providing services to our graduates that they may not be taking full advantage of. And so getting that information out, I think, is really important. And that's why this is so awesome, what you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So this dives into our next question, and I think you started to touch on it a little bit, but share with us your philosophy on internships and why you feel that they're valuable.
Yeah, I think in education, part of what our job to do is to expand the comfort zone, right? And if you think about education as a consumer product, it's one of the few products where people are okay with less than what they paid for, right? There's a subset of students, and I might have been one of them, who I like an easy class. I don't really want to have to do too much work, maybe not buy the textbook. I can either wear my pajamas or skip class, depending upon what's going on that day, but I want an A. Right? And as a consumer product, that's not the purpose of education. The purpose of education is to expand our comfort zone with new knowledge, skill, and ability that become relevant and a value add for the employer. So, whenever I talk to students about this, I know sometimes I want to try a new hairspray, right? And so I'll spray it to see if I like that smell, but then I've got to get the canister behind it because that one's down a spray. Yep. Right? As a consumer, we want the biggest bang for our buck. So I always told my students, I'm going to supersize your education in my class. I taught hospitality law and employment law and HR. And so we're going to supersize it. And if you're cool, we'll have a toy. And so, how do we really bring that to fruition? Internships is where that's at, right? It's taking that theoretical framework and really showing the application piece to it. It's getting you into situations where you're networking and where you find what I think are really the two most critical people everybody needs in their lives. You need a mentor and you need a champion. Right? And internships are the opportunity to find those mentors, to really capitalize on that mentorship relationship. And if you do it right, you'll find a champion. And if you have somebody who is your champion, they'll be able to open doors you otherwise couldn't get to. And so that internship is really critical to doing that. And I wouldn't just do one internship. Maybe there's only one required in your degree program. But I think it's an opportunity. If you do one and you're like, not going into that, then do another one, right? Let's find those areas that really fit our passions and our skills.
I'm always curious, and mentorship is something that is huge for the both of us. We talk about frequently. My thoughts are, I think a lot of students struggle with where to find a mentor, how to find a mentor. And obviously we have resources on campus that have built-in programs, but when you lose that structure, which I think sometimes we have, what are your thoughts on what to look for in a mentor and how to seek one out?
So I think of it, we've got to create things in manageable bites, and particularly for our students. If I told you to go park at Raymond James Stadium on a random Tuesday, right?
No one can see my face. It's freaking out.
It's
but yes.
overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive place. Where do I park? Well, this is paved. This is grass. This is under a light. This is closer to the door, but I'll get a door ding here. I gotta and so it becomes so much. You're like, just keep driving. It's the same thing for students. You should have a mentor. I don't know what that means.
Yes.
Right? Where do I start? And that's why, at least in the classes that I taught, we would actually create exercises that related to mentorship, and teach elevator pitches and do speed dating where you had to do. We bring in the advisory board actually, and we would have the students all paired up. And then you had to do an elevator pitch, and then they move to the next seat, to the next advisory board member, do an elevator pitch, move to the next one, do an elevator pitch. And then we'd have a couple of specific types of questions, some specific feedback, and then end with 3 more elevator pitches, right? And that means that my advisory council, which these people are amazingly accomplished folks, right? And here they are with an opportunity to spend time with 8 or 10 of the students, which is really why they're doing this. They really want to be helpful to our students. And so now they know it. They know a name, they know what your goals are, they know what your background is, they've had a little time with you, and it starts to sort of, prime the pump of what is it like to find a mentor. And so, I think that we've got to, as educators, break that down into very manageable. It's instead of go park at Raymond James, it's go park in lot D, row 6, and you can choose between spot 1 to 40.
Yep.
But we've narrowed it down to really make that a manageable activity.
Lovely. Thank you. And as you talk about speed dating, just to plug, we are going to have a speed networking event on February 9th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Lots of great employers are joining us, everywhere from Raymond James to Merrill Lynch, Jabil, Enterprise, and so many more. I know I'm leaving some out right now, but feel free to check that on our website. We have advertisements posts where you can register. Just a few spots left, so be sure you get in to register now.
And that is here, St. Pete campus in the School of Business and Finance, LPH.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're on the topic of internships. We're going to keep going. Did you have an internship through your career? And can you kind of give us the good, the bad, the ugly, what it taught you?
First of all, it's a great question. I know I had to do an internship, so I know I did one. But I also, I was a struggling college student, and I worked my way through school. And from the age of 17 until January of 2021, I have always had at least 2 jobs, and as many as 4.
Wow.
And so sitting here right now, I don't know that I can tell you what my internship was.
Yeah, but this is what our students look like at this campus. Many are working 1-2 jobs, and the internship question becomes difficult. But anyway, I didn't mean to.
Well, no, it does, because if you're already working and I've got a schedule, then how do I fix an internship into that?
Exactly.
And so it can become a challenge. And one of the things that when I created programs, I didn't want to tell a single parent who's a paralegal, but they wanted to be an accountant, that they had to give up their paralegal job to go do a 4-month internship that may or may not have employment at the end, and certainly wasn't going to pay at the same rate as that full-time position that they're using to support their family. And so I think it's important when we design curriculum that we also provide alternatives as a way to help support those students. I long before there was a term of the gig economy, I was gigging all the time, picking up some scratch wherever you could. And that could be something as simple as helping somebody lay mulch, and getting some scratch on the side, or having multiple jobs, which I will say also teaches you how to get out there and do what's necessary to engage with people, right?
Well, I was going to ask if any of the jobs were in the field that you were hoping to continue, or it was just to make the, bills.
I had zero aspirations. It's funny. We have a Chancellor's Leadership Council, a group of students, and one of the students today were talking about elevator pitches, and she's like, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, that's a perfectly fine answer.
It is.
My long-term goal is still to run a dive shop in the Caribbean. And so I digress. When I think back on the jobs, I worked in hospitality. My first job was selling Coca-Colas at Sanford Stadium. I was 11 years old. I got juiced into the job. My dad knew the guy who had the barbecue concession. And I got $2 a rack. So there are 20 Cokes on that rack. And you got $2 plus tips.
Wow.
And I had buns of steel because I did quite
you
a
did.
bit
Yeah, you did.
of walking.
It's
in
heavy
the stadium.
lifting.
It is. The next year I moved into concessions. I thought I was pretty money there, But, whether it's bartending or cocktailing or working in a restaurant or working shows in Las Vegas, they oftentimes will hire people to be short term. We have 4 days of a conference, and we just need somebody to come work at the conference in a number of different positions. And so there's just always ways to try to do things. And ultimately I went into hospitality. And when I sit here today and I think about how hospitality is framed, how I think about running our campus, it's a significant and integral part of that, right? Because it's about a concierge approach. It's about making things manageable and unfrightening and creating these comfort zones and expanding that knowledge, skill, and ability, but in ways where we're really kind of holding your hand through that. And that we're giving you good customer service. We're not giving you the runaround, that you're able to get served and you're not waiting in line for 7 hours. I mean, nobody wants to do that. And so all that hospitality is where it's at.
Okay.
And I love that you say that, because as I talk with students, I really feel like customer service is in every job, right? So as we talk about students who have, they don't necessarily have an internship, or they're thinking about getting an internship and they're trying to relay, how do I take what's on my page and turn that into something where I will be marketable to an employer? A lot of that is transferable skills. And I think a lot of that always comes back to customer service. What is the relationships that you're building with people? How are you building positive interactions that will ultimately benefit a company?
Absolutely. And no one's going to say, no, I don't like people who relate well, right? They're not a lot of employers going to say, well, wait, you're bringing too much.
What? You know how to build relationships?
Yeah. Crazy.
Okay.
So, kind of as we carry forward, you've had a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities to network. Share with our listeners your top tips for networking.
Incredibly important. Know someone's name. Repeat their name. The name, I forgot who said it, but the most important sound to anybody is the sound of their own name. And so remembering names, and whether that's a mnemonic that you use, if that's something in your head where you repeat it 3 times, if it's a habit you get into where you're like, well, thank you, Jill. That's so great, Jill. I really appreciate that, Jill. At some point,
That
Jill's
does sound so nice.
Doesn't it?
It's pleasing.
You're like, it's beautiful. And Ashley's like, well, what about Ashley? I think that's, there's the transactional and the transformative,
Yes.
right? So the transactional is look people in the eye, have a firm handshake if you're going to shake hands, or I think it's important to think about who is your audience. What do they relate to? I mean, we were before the show talking about music, and I probably should not talk about my musical taste with somebody who was born after 2000, because my musical taste is stuck in the 70s. And so frequently, I used to make jokes in class. I would make a reference to a movie, and students like, I've never seen that.
Don't do movie.
Yeah.
But you can reference music because they are what do you call it? Structuring, replaying.
That's true.
You know,
That's true. They're
nowadays,
remixing
anyway.
and they're
Remixing,
doing
thank
cool
you.
stuff. I'll give you that. But in the networking, so the transactional are those elements. The transformational is really what's the purpose in meeting somebody, and it's not just to collect the business cards, right? It's is this something that really impacts where you want to be, or maybe something you want to ask questions for? I think always having some questions in the holster, right? Because there's always sort of that awkward moment, and then that's assuming that you're networking at a time you're on. I'm a morning person. I am on fire in the morning, and at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I am done. And so I have to be a little more intentional about what I'm going to do if I'm going to be doing some networking in the evening or going later into the night than if it's a breakfast. And so knowing kind of what your own cadence is, I think, is really important as well.
That's a good perspective, because I would not network in the morning.
No.
Unless it is over coffee and we can be quiet.
Yeah.
I think it ties into what you were saying about the mentoring and the champion, the advocate, but also thinking about that as you move into your networking piece, like, why am I meeting this person, and assessing and getting to know them and them getting to know you. So leaving them with information, also that exchange, I think that's
And the
so
follow-up.
important.
You gotta
Yeah.
have the follow-up.
Yes.
Follow-up's so important.
It's really important to follow up with, hey, I appreciated meeting you, or I like your insights on blah, which gets to paying attention. Because if you didn't remember their name or what they told you, it's hard to follow up.
That little piece of reflection and follow through sets you apart. I do.
Absolutely.
I see that. We've seen it
Yeah.
with students. We kind of touched on this topic, skills, developing skills and such. So what do you think is essential for students in their skill portfolio to have to be successful in today's market?
Wow. Actually, I kind of go back to the customer service piece. Regardless of what field you're in, you're part of an organizational structure. And even as an entrepreneur, you're gonna be hiring people into your team. If you think about somebody who's doing even back of the house kind of coding kind of elements, you're still part of an organizational structure. Somebody that you work with, you report to, that may report to you, and then the role that you have as a mentor. Right. I mean, we all strive to have mentors. We should also have mentees. And particularly as we grow in our own disciplines. So I think it's really important to think about what is my role within this organization or within this team. How do I bring value? How do I make sure that the people that I'm working with feel seen and valued and heard? That I have an approachability in the context of whether it's what we're specifically working on, or the other aspects. I mean, life's going on, right? There are things that people need to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to give you 100% this month because I've got this going on with my mom, or whatever. And so, and next month I may have an issue. And so, part of a team is we're going to be supporting each other and picking up what occasionally is some slack. So yeah, I think people.
All
Fantastic.
comes back to people.
Yes.
So as we think about people and leading people, talk to us about your leadership style. How would you describe that?
World domination.
Fantastic.
love
And
it.
we shall end there.
I'm an adaptive leader. And so it's very much about change. It's interesting. I once had a mentor, Mike Levin. He was the CEO of the Georgia Aquarium. He had formerly been in the hospitality industry. I'd actually worked for him in Las Vegas. He couldn't have picked me out of the lineup, but he was just an incredible leader. He's the co-founder of the Asian American Hotel Owners Association. I mean, just truly top of his game. And he walked in my office, and he ended up being a donor to our program at Kennesaw. I remember the first time he came to my office, and I'm a stacker, and he walked in, and he goes, God, I love a messy desk. He goes, I bet you can reach in any one of these stacks and pull out exactly what you want. And I was like, oh my God, he gets me. But he said, you're a creative disruptor. And so he said that creative disruption is really those spaces where you're able to make demonstrable change and be able to do it relatively quickly. And at the time, no, that sounds awful. I don't want to be one of those. And in the decades since then, I've kind of come to embrace it, that if everything's going just great and fabulous, I'm probably not the person that gets hired for a job.
Right.
And it's not that it's bad. It's just, what can we do better?
Right.
There used to be a sign on the back of my door that said, coffee and wine are my life coaches. Coffee wakes me up in the morning, smacks me on the fanny and says, go get 'em, Tiger. And at the end of the day, wine is like, oh, you tried. Tomorrow's another day. So, but I think that's true. As a creative disruptor, we may be doing it well. How do we do it better? Right? There's this constant kind of push of, how is this more meaningful? How's this more effective or efficient? How do we make people feel better about this? And so it really is an opportunity to kind of delve into it. And when you look at adaptive leadership, it's not necessarily about the structures that are in place, but the outcomes of what we can accomplish. And so that's where I don't know, you should ask my team. You might get a totally different answer.
Probably not. I think how we feel about things is usually what we exude with other people.
Before you ask your follow-up, well, I was just thinking, it's important for students. I've had the question before in the office. It's like, oh, well, how do I build leadership skills, right? Or I haven't had a position, I don't have a chance yet, I'm just doing this job. And I'm like, every single day you have an opportunity to lead, right?
Yep.
And I think that students need to kind of think about that, especially as they're stepping into this college role, whether it's as a first-time transfer, what have you. But you are setting an example in some way, shape, or form. And what example do you want to set? So thinking about your leadership style as a student is important. It's not something that somebody's going to tell you, oh, or you need this job to do that. It's something inside as well as your experiential learning.
Absolutely. And leadership's, it's something you model for others. It's not a title. It has nothing to do with titles.
Right. Yes. They were like, oh, I haven't been a manager. And I'm like, you don't have to manage.
You don't need to be a manager. You don't need to have titles on your resume to be a leader. And if you really want to hone those skills, I think volunteerism is some great space to do that.
Thank you for saying that.
Go work with Habitat for Humanity and help build a house.
Service.
And they'll identify, okay, you're in charge of framing, or you're in charge of doing this, or you're in charge of making sure all these people get water, or whatever it is, you know. So yeah, it has nothing to do with titles. It's really about, can you assess a situation? Can you decide what people need and how to bring that support? That's leadership.
And I love that, because it's really, as you look at, and I geek out about leadership, but as you look at like different texts and the evolution of leadership, right? I mean, we typically default to thinking a leader is someone in an authoritative position because that's what we've been taught for so many years, right? And it's not until like the last, I don't know, several years where we're starting to see this evolution of leadership is adaptive, leadership is social change and being a servant leader, and looking at things like that.
I was at a YMCA prayer breakfast 3 months ago or whatnot, and one of the gentlemen who was speaking, he said, leaders seek to serve, not be served. And I loved that. I mean, I came back to my own team and I said, so every day what we need to do is figure out, we need to seek how we serve this campus, how we serve our community. And so I think it is about serving others.
And I think our campus has always done that and been able to, because of the more intimate setting that we have and the population. And that I think the students, faculty, staff love that we continue that model.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my last question for you is, as students are listening to us talk about leadership, again, I think it's another conversation that can be daunting at times. How do you think our USF students, what resources can they use, or what are ways that they can develop their own leadership style?
Well, I think the volunteerism and service piece is a big component. I think the students, we've got students in Puppy Love, one of our residential communities, and they're training seeing eye dogs. I think that's about serving. That's leadership. I think the student clubs and organizations, our student government, the opportunities our faculty provide, even just being a student worker in an office, and I know that I've talked to students who are like, I'm a student worker, I'm not a leader. And it's like, but you are, and so I think a matter of just leaning into opportunity and being willing to accept those. And then you're being given a chance to show what you can do. And that's really where you can set yourself apart from the other students, sometimes from the other staff. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I feel like it's a great practice field. This setting, this environment.
Yeah.
So do it. I love how you said lean into the opportunities.
Absolutely.
And I think we have an abundance, which can be overwhelming, but come talk to us. That's what we're here for. All right. Well, really appreciate this show.
Yeah.
You being here today. 2 final questions. What is one piece of wisdom, advice that on your career journey you wished you had learned sooner?
Nelson Mandela said, "I don't lose. I win or I learn." And I love that because I used to think that if I didn't get my way or if I didn't win the argument or whatnot, that I'd lost. And the reality is you learn things for the next time. And it took me a long time to get to that because I felt defeated and deflated. I wish I'd had that sooner.
Great perspective.
I love that. And what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Not by email. No. I get about 250 emails a day. And so I do my darndest to get through them. But there are times I am back to back to back. I'm available for a coffee. Happy to go do a lunch. Reaching out to our office, and it can be by email or phone. Somebody will answer it. I'd love for the listeners to come forward.
And you're participating in almost every event that we host on campus. You were in the boat race. I mean, anything and everything. So students need to come out and get involved too.
Absolutely. And we have been talking about creating some specific opportunities to engage with students. It's just a matter of getting to the point where those are put into place. Again, 6 months, 25 days. So
you've done so
on
much
I was
in
gonna
the time that you've had. So
I don't feel like it's been that short. I feel like you've been here for a while. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's dog
listeners
years.
can hear it first, hear where to join and meet. All right. We appreciate you joining the podcast, Getting Down to Business, and find us on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, or Apple. Don't forget to please instant message us with a question so we can put you on the show.
And remember, when you do, if we choose your question, you will get this beautiful mug, tumbler. Thank you again. Just kind of a note to remind everyone, if you are looking at internships or you're looking for different events, obviously I mentioned the networking event we have coming up in February, but there's tons of events and jobs and internships on Handshake. So please be sure to use that as a resource. Use us as your career advisors as a resource, and any other staff. We're always here for you and willing to help. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Getting Down to Business. We'll see you soon.
Go Bulls.